Alright, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some places feel like they've been around forever, while others seem like they're constantly changing? Take Florida, for example. It's a state that's always in the news for its beaches, retirees, and real estate, but what if I told you that in certain corners of the state, the population has been almost entirely static for decades? Not because of some weird time loop, but because the people who live there were literally born there. And not just born, raised, educated, married, and buried. This isn't just data, it's a cultural phenomenon. Let's dive into why this matters and what it says about the soul of Florida. Now, I know what you're thinking, Florida? Isn't that the place where everyone moves to from somewhere else? And yeah, that's true for big cities like Miami or Tampa. But here's the twist, when you look at the smallest, most rural counties, the story flips completely. Places like Liberty County, which barely has 8,000 people, have over 74% of residents born in Florida. That's not just high, it's almost unheard of. What does that mean? It means these communities are like living museums of Florida's past. They're not just places people move to, they're places people stay in, generation after generation. Let me break this down. The top counties on this list all share something in common. They're not exactly the kind of places you'd see on a tourism ad. They're not glamorous. They're not bustling with tech startups or international airports. They're places where the cost of living is low, the pace is slow, and the sense of community is tight. Take Gadsden County, for instance. Over 70% of its residents were born there. Why? Because if you've got a job, a family, and a house, why would you leave? It's not like there's a shortage of opportunities in the big cities. But for many people, the idea of uprooting your life just to chase a slightly better paycheck isn't worth it. Especially when you're already comfortable. But here's where it gets interesting. The contrast between these rural counties and the urban ones is staggering. Take Broward County, home to Fort Lauderdale and a huge chunk of South Florida's population. Only 35% of its residents were born in Florida. That means nearly two-thirds came from somewhere else. Why? Because cities like Miami and Fort Lauderdale are magnets for immigrants, transplants, and people chasing the American dream. It's a completely different dynamic. In places like Broward, the population is constantly shifting, whereas in places like Liberty County, it's like watching a clock that never moves. Now, let's talk about what this says about Florida as a whole. On one hand, it's a state that's always been a destination for people looking for a fresh start. But on the other hand, it's also a state where certain regions have resisted that trend. This isn't just about demographics, it's about identity. In these rural counties, being a Floridian isn't just a label, it's a birthright. And that's powerful. It means these communities have a deep-rooted connection to the land, the traditions, and the way of life that's been passed down through generations. But here's a question that's been bugging me: what happens when the balance shifts? What if the younger generation in these rural counties starts to leave for college, jobs, or just the allure of city life? Would that change the fabric of these communities? Or would they find ways to adapt? I mean, even in the most traditional places, change is inevitable. The challenge is whether these communities can hold on to their identity while still evolving. And don't get me started on the implications for politics and culture. If you've got a county where 70% of people were born there, their priorities, values, and even their political leanings are going to be different from a county where only 35% of people were born there. It's not just about where you live, it's about who you are. So the next time you hear about Florida's population trends, don't just think about the numbers. Think about the stories behind them. Because in the end, this data isn't just about where people come from, it's about where they choose to stay.